And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Attention and roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time, and of course 5:05 Pacific Coast. It's dark, bright, and early. Hell of a week. Friday roundtable. Going to wrap it up for you. Executive Perspective put on a hell of a show. Sal Greco had some big names on. We had a hell of a week and bringing news to you. With that being said, we got to talk about NYPD Quality of Life Division. But before we get into that, just want to say yesterday we put on an X Space. We're going to do it once a month. I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to get engaged, talk about big topics. Yesterday we talked about the mayoral candidate race. The X Space went pretty well. For many of our friends and listeners that were present, if you're not familiar with X Space, it's pretty much a virtual town hall. We will have links available for you to check out. We do recommend that you take part in them. Will be once a month, mostly held on a Thursday. We'll notify you and keep you posted. So let's get right into the NYPD teams. John, good morning. Let's go.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Happy Friday. So Eric Adams, Jessica Tisch, they unveiled their new Quality of Life division. I don't know how new it is. We're gonna bring you that. We're gonna bring you that press conference. We're not gonna show you the Eric Adams because it's just gibberish. He actually wasn't on his game yesterday while he was talking about it. But just he opened up with that basically since day one of his administration. It's been very clear that they will not tolerate an atmosphere where anything goes. They're taking public safety to the next level, and issues like illegal vending, substance abuse, abandoned vehicles, illegal mopeds, reckless driving, and all of these other things they're going to solve now. He hasn't done it for the last 3 years, but now because they're bringing in this Quality of Life division with going to be head by more chiefs, and they're going to pull more people away from patrol. And now that they're going to implement another stat called Q-stat, all of those things overnight are going to be gone. So for the last 3 years, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the fact that major crime in New York City today, while everyone's talking about historic crime lows, don't worry about today. Don't pay attention to the fact that major crime, the 7 majors, are up 28% since prior to Eric Adams taking office. Don't look at those statistics because we're breaking records here. So I was laughing watching the press conference. I'm like, I was like, to me, I like it, but at the same time, it looks like a dog and pony show to me. Before we bring in the press conference, just kind of want to go around and get everybody's thoughts. And today joining us, we got retired Deputy Chief Rob Lukash of the Executive Perspective, and our brother Marlon Bethel of the Finest Unfiltered joining us. Wrongfully terminated intelligence detective Marlon Bethel. So welcome to the stage, guys. Chief, what are your thoughts upon hearing it? Like, before we get into the press conference, what are you thinking about these Q teams and Q-stat?
So to me, it's just, by the way, good morning, John, morning, Eric, morning, Marlon. Yeah, to me, it's just the same stuff. I mean, we're going back to what we did in the past. It's the same quality of life stuff. It's just keep coding it with a new name and bringing in different things. And whenever you put stats on things, the reputation of them putting stats on things, they've ruined everything that they put stats on. So why say Q-stat when you don't need it? And again, are we taking away from the precinct COs? I see Twitter all the time, right? So and I hate when the COs do it too, but I know that the job pushes it. But they'll put out, the community requested us to move this car, and look, now the car is gone. Like they did this amazing thing. They towed a car, and now they're going to move this over to Q-stat. Like why? What happened? Where was the failure? It seems like a big publicity stunt to me. Like, hey, look at, I'm running for re-election, and guess what? We're moving ahead with this program that I've always wanted to do. When in fact it's been being done all the time. So it's just the same rhetoric. I don't know. Truthfully, it pissed me off when I saw it because I'm like, what are you coming up with? Like, this is ridiculous.
Marlon,
Wow.
before you jump in, I just want to say, I used to always say it, and I say it now, Twitter has become a battle. It's like a competition for the CEOs. Like, who's got a better Twitter page? Like,
Yeah.
let's forget about policing. Who's got the sexy Twitter page? Like, oh, I got more pictures today. Ridiculous. Love it. Marlon, sorry, brother. I took you 30 seconds.
No worries, bro. No worries. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, chat. Happy Friday. So I was watching that press conference yesterday, and you know what? It hit me. All this time I've been calling like 1PP idiots, and I've been too hard on 1PP. So I came up. So I have an idea today that I'm willing to share out to 1PP, so I can hopefully get somebody promoted over there. All right? Hear me out. So we're gonna take all the active cops. We're gonna take a group of active cops in the precincts. The guys who have a lot of collars. We're gonna give them plainclothes training, right? Right? Hear me? Then we're gonna put them in unmarked vehicles, right? And we're gonna call it not anti-crime. Okay. So there's my idea for anyone in 1PP, and you can thank me later. There's an extra star for you, and there's some discretionary pay for you, right?
Marlon, the past is new. I think I heard that before from someone.
I still got my cargo shorts and some jerseys. I haven't pulled them out in a while, so let me know.
How about what color were those cargos? Khaki?
Camo, baby. Camo. I have about 4 different pairs of camos.
No,
It's actually
khakis
known
are
as
gone,
the Johnny
bro.
Mac, the uniform. So.
Yeah, khakis are gone, bro. It's gonna be a new color now, So anyway, I have a lot of questions about this, and I have a lot of concerns, which we're gonna bring up here. But there's 2 things we should ask right now immediately. Why do we need this? And what exactly is going on here? What does it mean? So yeah, let's get to it.
I think you're right. These are great questions. And so what I would like to ask, and this is what's great about this platform now, is we have so much perspective, experience from the police department, and look at some different angles, experience, and how this actually plays out. So, Rob, being a former chief and actually running a command, how does this affect the ability for a commander to actually be intrusive with crime? Because to me, I always said we have way too many stats. I mean, I think CompStat should encompass all the stats, but you have CompStat, you have DOMStat, which is domestic violence stat for anyone who's outside New York City, or if you're just a police enthusiast. You have ChalkStat, which is for narco. You have ForStat. We have a stat for everything. Now there's going to be QStat, obviously. And I would say, as a commander, there's, for most of them, from my experience and what I've watched, is them spending about 3 days in preparation for a CompStat, and then after CompStat, spending 3 days to catch up on what's going on in their command. So how does this affect their ability to actually be effective in knowing what's going on in their command amidst a crime wave that we have right now, and amidst the problem of a staffing crisis? How does that affect your ability?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because you got to think about that, right? All these preparations, all these books, you got to make sure that the numbers are up, right? Because you're not going to want to go to any of these stat meetings, whether it's traffic stat or DOMStat, with bad numbers, right? So you're going to be looking to push these numbers forward. So you talk about a quota, oh no, there's no quotas, but I know that I need performance indicators because I'm not going to go down there with zeros, right? So that now you're pushing more pressure on the cops and these Q teams. And then I question, where's my responsibility go as a CO of a precinct? Does it go to my borough XO and the CO, or does it go to this new chief that's in charge of QStat? I mean, where do I report? And then also, what happens when, if I'm a CO and all of a sudden I see this QStat team coming in from the borough or from downtown and coming in and start issuing C summonses in my command? Now I'm like, oh, now I got to do a little bit of catch up. Is it something I didn't do? Are they gonna? They used to show pictures up on the CompStat board. Oh, do you know about these homeless? You know about this drug deal going down? And it's like they try to embarrass you. So are they going to try to embarrass me? And I'm going to make sure what they did. Did I address those conditions? Did I take care of those dots that they're hitting? So I mean, it just seems to be like a convoluted thing. Let's just keep it all in perspective that the CO is in charge of his command. and he should be able to do what he needs to do in that command. I think personally, if I'm the CO, this Q-Stat's getting dumped on the XO again, right? This is another job for the XO, the poor guy. He's going to have to go to these meetings like every other meeting, whether it's force stat, traffic stat, and it just balloons and balloons. It's a ridiculous thing. It's just constantly adding more layers of oversight and more layers of responsibility that already being done. Right? It's just not necessary.
Do you
So
think there'll be a pod stat to manage?
It could be a pod stat. We could do a pod stat. Yeah.
But well, Pat Donahue says you guys should implement in 1PP a side piece stat so that you could keep track of all the girls who now think you're good looking because you got promoted a couple of times. You know, so side piece stat. You know, the wives will run it. That's it. So no, I agree with you, dude. I think there's a lot of. I like trying to hone down and focus on crime. I do. And do that, but I see a big problem when it's not the CO honing down and focusing on crime, when it's coming from up top, when it's coming from the bureaucracy. You know, one of the things I think about when I hear this often is like they're talking about low-level crimes, right? It's something I think all four of us believe in, like the policing of low-level crimes, but to a point, right? We have to understand what we're getting into and what we're focusing in on. Let's go back to Eric Gardner, right? Now, I think all four of us are under the impression that Eric Gardner had a heart attack and died, and Daniel Pantaleo did absolutely nothing wrong that day, other than the fact that he was the officer told to go there by a chief of department's office from up top in an overzealous approach. Get down there, get that guy off there. We got too many 311s about this guy, blah, blah, blah. And that Eric Gardner situation was completely avoidable. If 1PP was never involved, that situation never happens. Eric Gardner still dies of a heart attack at some point later on. Like that was not Daniel Panaleo's fault, but the police department isn't held accountable for that. You know, and I'm scared when I sit there and I start to hear there's not going to be a number. Like, no, there's going to be a number. Yeah. And you're going to be pushing these guys to get numbers. And this is all being pushed through a first grade detective who's in the rank of deputy mayor, but actually benefiting as a first grade detective named Kaz Daughtry. And he doesn't really do things very well. He doesn't think things out clearly. Everything's push, go, push, go. I foresee a big problem that's going to happen, potentially another Gardner incident or another George Floyd incident that's going to go national, and it's going to be because, oh, you guys care about minor crimes. You guys care about e-bikes. You guys care about Lucy's. You guys did this. You should have never did this. They killed him over a Lucy. That's going to be the narrative. And honestly, if you think Eric Adams, Jessica Tisch, and Kaz Daughtry are going to be standing there with you, you're out of your mind. If you're going to do this job, do it. Use your brain. Remember the crimes you're dealing with. And guess what? If that guy on the e-bike's fleeing, bye. He got away. I didn't get him. Sorry, I didn't get the summons.
Well, you know what? To me, from my perspective, as I look at this, you're right. What we see is the same horse in different color. And for me, it's going to be intrusive police work. And when it comes to Q teams, it's the same thing as conditions and other teams. But what I ultimately think this comes down to is I think this is a rebrand of the khaki pants. I think this is going to be a complete rebrand of the citywide response team, which I like to refer to as the criminal response team. And it looks exactly the same to me. It's going to be a group of guys that are hungry to do intrusive police work, that are not part of the actual commands, that are going to be led by a chief. Marlon, you talk about things we've heard before. Have we heard that before? Have we heard of a unit that was led by a chief, who's now chief of department, that went out in khaki pants doing intrusive police work, which amidst a major amount of problems contributing? Yeah, we don't want to talk about that. And look at the problems we have. We've had some serious controversial incidents around vehicle pursuits. We had some controversy in the amount of force that they're using, the optics we've seen on camera, the inexperience. We've had a police officer that lost his life in this unit, and I've watched, and I'm sorry to say this, and we have to speak the truth. I've watched the tactics. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. It's so sad that this police officer was posthumously promoted to detective and lost his life. And there's a family out there that lost his detective. Those tactics were absolutely terrible because they're being led by fools. So this is, to me, this is a complete rebrand. We'll get rid of the khaki pants. We'll change them for camo shorts, whatever we change it for. But it's the same horse and it's a different color. That's why it's going to be led by a chief. So that's their layer of protection to protect them from the CCRBs and going forward. But again, what I'm curious to say to myself is, are the majority of those still present at the CRT, are they going to transfer into this unit? Or are those cops that are now plagued by potential CCRBs and potential civil litigation or potential critique from the DA's offices, will those cops be left behind? And now they'll start with some new cops, as I've said before, for the cops that are championing for John Shell that they were in this unit. Believe me, you will be left behind. And I don't want that to happen to you, but that's the reality. Marlon, what do you think?
Yeah, just because the unit now uses the same software that the same software that underpinned the CRT, like the Comlink, just because this new Q teams are using that same software, just because they're reporting to the same chief that they did in CRT, doesn't mean that the Q teams are the khaki pants guys, Eric. You're such a crazy conspiracist, you.
We're starting to sound like InfoWars on the on the Finest Unfiltered.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, this thing is a rebrand. It's 100% a rebrand, and look at the command structure. They're basically taking out the khaki pants from Chief of Patrol's office and moving them into Chief of Department's office under John Chell, who happened to have been Chief of Patrol. And if you look at what Tish said was the mission statement, it's exactly what the khaki pants guys did. In fact, if you watch the video, the ride along they had with, I think it was WABC 6 months ago or 8 months ago, they actually told you that they're a conditions team. So, Tish was actually asked that question in the press conference, and I thought it was hilarious that she like glossed right over it, And I was watching it, and it seemed to me like they were like squirming over there, But it's a rebrand of khaki pants, and like you said, I have to wonder if the guys who might have gotten themselves in a little trouble in CRT are going to be in this unit, or whether they themselves are going to be whether they're going to have to find a new batch of naive rookies to dirty up their CPI, So.
Wouldn't it be funny if the guys that were in the khaki pant teams said they wanted to go into the Q teams, but everybody said, you have too many high CCRBs, so we're not going to take you. You don't make the cut. So we gotta get rid of you. It's crazy.
Sorry, my computer's bugging out over here. I don't know what the hell's going on.
I think Tish said that it wasn't going to be the old quality of life. It wasn't going to be the old stuff that they did in the early '90s with Brat and everything else. But it's all indications are that it is. So I don't know what she's talking about either.
So, yeah, Rob. So let's listen. Let's listen to before we play the press conference. Let's just listen to a couple of months ago. Let's talk about pursuits. Let's talk about CRT, the inception, and let's hear what the things that were being said about that then. So let's just listen to this real quick.
On the NYPD's policy when it comes to pursuits. Just over the weekend, at least 2 separate chases happened here in the city. That includes this one in Washington Heights yesterday, and it ended with a vehicle flipped over. It's evidence that pursuits can be dangerous. But the NYPD says they're also a valuable tool to catch suspected criminals under the right conditions. News 4's Mark Santia spoke exclusively with one of the city's top officers about this topic. Mark.
And Adam, the NYPD says it's going on offense, targeting dangerous criminals that try to run from police. A pair of police pursuits over the weekend. NYPD officers giving chase, making arrests, pulling guns off the street.
We're not going to allow this to happen anymore. Our training, our expertise, we're pretty good at it. And we continue stopping cars and bikes that are breaking the law in the city.
NYPD Chief of Patrol John Schell speaking exclusively to News 4 about recent police pursuits, including the arrest of a man on parole with a gun in Washington Heights yesterday, and this driver in the Bronx who smashed into several cars this morning, including a police cruiser, and took out this scaffolding before being arrested.
We are not letting you walk away. We'll be compassionate. We'll be kind. We'll give people breaks. We're breaking the law. Guns, shootings, gang members, robberies with these cars and bikes. We are not having it anymore. It's over.
And it's not just old-fashioned police work. The NYPD also utilizing new tools to track down criminals.
Aviation technology. So some of our pursuits, by definition, are pursuits, but it's aviation pursuing, and we're laying back.
What do you say to a New Yorker who might say, with these pursuits happening, what if an innocent person gets hurt? Is it worth the risk?
We don't want anybody to get hurt.
Safety remains paramount, according to Chief Schell, who says pursuits can be called off at any time.
The supervisor has to take a lot of things into consideration: time of day, location, weather, type of crime. We have extensive training on this through the police academy and through cops that are currently working.
A pursuit and arrest of a man on a scooter in the Bronx this morning led to police finding a gun. Chief Schell believes these will lead to driving crime down.
So this person's on a bike with a gun. What do you think he's going to do? He's going to probably rob somebody, possibly shoot somebody. And these efforts is why crime is down. And shootings in New York City, 8.5 million people, is down 30% in August.
The NYPD also says training is key. Their community response team trains quarterly on pursuits. We're live tonight in the Mount Eden section of the Bronx. I'm Mark Santia, News.
So we all know what happened there, right? The CRT was told they're no longer doing pursuits. And voila, guess what? We have a whole new unit that's going to come up and chase these bikes.
That's it. Boom, right there it is. They got this triple fat neck loser that actually utilized vehicle pursuits as a crime tactic. That's what was so interesting about this. Vehicle pursuits are, in most cases, a last resort. And it's based on an exceptional case that involved in a pursuit. Now, what's interesting about that is we all know it. We were all cops, including you, Chief. Marlon, being investigated. John, you were a lieutenant. I was a lieutenant. If you're doing police work, it's in your blood. If a vehicle takes off on you, you're going to pursue that vehicle. But at some point, it takes discipline to realize, wait a minute, what is going on here? Is the risk worth the reward? And we stop ourselves, or we stop each other, right? That's the beauty of the masculinity on the job and having the ability to check each other and say, wait a minute, stop, right? This is not worth it. But what John Schell did was he implemented it as a crime-fighting tactic. He tried to implement it. Hey, this is actually an invaluable tool, a resource that we use to actually stop crime by chasing vehicles around the city. And that's insane. And think about it. This is the vehicle pursuits that we were aware of. We recently had an incident where police officers left the scene of an abandoned vehicle that was burning with occupants inside. So how many vehicle pursuits are we not aware of? How many actually ended up in incidents that did not get reported? And that's why I'm saying by this, the cops that have been affected by this crime-fighting tactic, that their records may be, as John likes to say, peppered up. That's the issue. And I've said this a long time ago, and I tried to advise these cops that I'm not against you. I'm on your side. I was out there doing police work. Marlon was doing police work. Former Chief Rob here was doing police work. So was John. We were all out there, and we understand what can happen to you, and we've seen the job from the inside out, and now we're from the outside, a voice to help you out. And we received a lot of opposition for that. And I'm sure some of those cops right now are saying, damn, I hate to admit, but those guys are right. Because will you be left behind with those cases? Marlon is right. And so is and Rob, you're absolutely right. Will they be denied a transfer? Because, hey, your record is now peppered up. So we're now going to put you back into commands and utilize cops with clean records. Then we'll pepper up their records, and we'll just keep recycling this system. And that's what's going to happen. And what's interesting, I think Someone earlier here said in the comments that this is supposed to be a 2,000 man unit citywide. Great question. Where are they going to get these 2,000 cops with these clean records to do this intrusive police work? So right now, if you're going to be this quasi anti-crime, quasi CRT team and this rebrand, ask yourself, where do you want to be? Will this pepper up your record? And the chief that's involved in this, how long will this chief be around? Will he actually be there to help you out? I say it all the time. When you're in a unit, you're a permanent guest. And the upper echelon, the one that's leading that unit, is just a guest because they'll be there temporarily. And by the time those investigations creep up and you're actually facing GO15s, for anyone outside the NYPD, GO15 is actually interrogation where you have rights. But when you speak on what you did, it's like you're going to your funeral because you're going alone. And those commanders or the leadership that's involved in those cases, they won't be there anymore. They'll be on to their next venture or they'll be retired.
So, Marlon, what are you thinking about this? What do you think about is this the same thing? Is John Shell just? I mean, you already said it was a rebrand, but after listening to what he was talking about 2 summers ago, after stopping the pursuits, aren't they pushing the same exact thing? And they're actually saying the same exact stuff. Oh, shootings are down 30%. Historic. It's actually they didn't even change their narrative at all. Like. Am I wrong here? Do you foresee vehicle pursuits for moped stuff like this? Am I missing something here?
Yeah, well, here's what else. Sewell was saying that too back in 2021. She's used that exact same, almost the exact same verbiage. You know, there was just no, at least public acknowledgement of a CRT team, but she was saying the same thing in 2021. We're going to target quality of life, and you know. And she mentioned the increases that at present at the time, you know. So you know, what has changed since then, and why hasn't apparently those measures didn't work. So here we are again, and like I said, this is a rebrand. This is 100% a rebrand. But what's curious in that press conference is that Tish says that some of the issues they're gonna address is not traditional crime fighting issues, which is kind of weird because she then mentions it's kind of odd because she then mentions drug use and noise complaints and writing summons, which to me was exactly what I did when I was in conditions, and I was like 18 years, 10 years ago, let's say. So this is a rebrand, but the language that they're using is curious. And to me, it seems like they're trying to avoid comparisons to the CRT. And
I mean, I think you got to forgive Jessica Tish, though, too, because I think on her tour to paint herself as the mayor for New York City in 2029, I think we all lose sight of the fact that she's a billionaire heiress. And she has no idea what goes on the streets in New York City or what the police department ever did at any time. She was hanging out with Ivanka Trump and they were flying all over the world. Like, so we have to forgive her for really not knowing what the history of New York City is and how the police department actually works. I mean, and currently, what do you hear? You hear Ray Kelly and Bill Bratton speaking directly through her. That's what I hear, but she doesn't have the nuance and the history to understand. Oh, this is new. This is new stuff. Oh, wow. We're going to go after drug dealers? I never heard of that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Here's what else I don't get, right? Isn't like every cop in a sense is a conditions cop, because that quality of life is what we address as cops. What if you have a condition in your sector? What are you not now a part of Q team? I mean, think of it. You have a condition in your sector, you got to address it, or you got to bring it to the attention so that it can be addressed, right? So I just don't understand like this, like we're compartmentalizing something that's really, it really should be a department-wide policy. We really should be empowering the supervisors and the commanders in the precincts so they can take care of these issues, so we don't have to bring it to a citywide unit to do it, you know?
And will these Q teams have? Will they have a legal team? Will they have that loser Kevin Ram assigned to them? Will they still have a legal team? I'm sure they will. I'm sure it will look just like the CRT team. The only thing we're going to see that's going to be very different is the color of their pants, because that's a big deal. It's very important what color your pants are. It makes a difference on how dynamic you are. That's very important, right? Rob, don't you think khaki pants make you a lot faster? Or maybe we should move to red pants.
They do. Like when I was a kid growing up, you had the Pro Keds, man. Pro Keds make you run faster. You were able to do things that normal kids couldn't do. So yeah, you put a different color pants on, they do it. I can't tell you. No, it's a whole nother topic, but I can't tell you how mad ESU guys were when counterterrorism and ECT, evidence collection team, they all got the same patches that ESU did. And it's like, well, what do you got to come up with something different? Come up with something new. But yeah, the khaki pants that makes you it gives you superpowers. It's like a cape, right? You basically put it on, and you're able to write these crazy C summonses all of a sudden. Your quality of life summonses. As far as the pursuits go, listen. First of all, Shell pissed me off. You're standing there with your hands in your pocket. You look like a little kid waiting for a lollipop. Stand like a man. And the second thing is pursuits. You listen, as a cop, I love pursuits. It was exciting. It was a cat and mouse game, right? Hey, let's get this guy. And on the most part, on late tours, you can pursue people, because there's not a lot of people out, especially where I was in the South Bronx in the 4-1. It was pretty, industrial area. So you could do that. You could get away with it. As you progress as a supervisor, you say, well, no, there are things you should stop at a certain pursuit, because we look at that patrol guide and yeah, when the actual arrest outweighs the safety for the public, you have to weigh those two things. So you do need to call it off. And we all know when you call off a pursuit, it usually doesn't happen, right? There's always, all right, so, it's called off, but they continue on, But yeah, it's definitely a serious liability. And as the city becomes more and more populated, you don't need that craziness. Let them go. The other thing I want to quickly talk about is Shell talks about aviation as this new technology, this tracking technology. That's not new. That was there when I was there. They had that. We had drones back then, everything. So it just seems to be the same thing. What's old is what's new again. And I'm just going to rephrase it and give a different name. And that's going to make everything so much better. It's ridiculous.
I think you're spot on, John. What do you think about this, John? Because I think that what you said is absolutely right. You talked about the 2029 potential mayoral candidate race for Jessica Tisch, right? So obviously, who's in her corner right now? Bill Bratton, Ray Kelly. So, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing, my observations, is that what they want to bring back is intrusive police work and the best form of stop, question, possibly frisk, because they know that's what works in order for her to bring crime down. Because the reality is they know what the numbers are and where it needs to be, and which is why they want to bring back intrusive police work and give this fancy window dressing to try to make it appear to be something else. Do you think the observation is accurate that they're trying to bring it back to what they were doing in their era, but just give it a different appearance?
I think that they've been using inexperienced rookies led by low integrity cops, supervisors who have had awful careers training these rookies and doing work that they don't understand, going out and actually doing what Eric Adams said that Ray Kelly and the police department were doing for 30 years when in fact they weren't. Now, were there some things that he was right about? Yeah, there was some. When you talk about the quotas, but his quota system's way worse. The push for numbers is way worse. The numbers, the lies when it comes to the misreporting and the downgrading of crimes. Eric Adams is Rudy Giuliani on crack. You just don't know it. Like, whatever the abuses that these leftists and these progressives talked about when they were talking about Rudy Giuliani, I mean, look at what happened with these CRT teams. Why do you think this rebrand is necessary? If everything that Adams was doing was working, why do we have to do this? Why aren't they just expanding the CRT team? Ron said they're going to bring 2,000 officers to this Q team. 2,000. To do what? The same work that you have doing the CRT team? It makes absolutely no sense. The media in New York, honestly, they're complicit. Or either that or they're so dumb. They really need, just give us press passes. We'll come and do it for free. Do you want us to ask the questions in the press conferences? Because we will. And the problem that's happening in these press conferences is the media is being controlled. Kayla Mamalek and little Fabian Levy are controlling what you could ask. Like there should be constant questioning of what is the difference between this Q team and the CRT team? What is going to happen? What are the numbers? What are the performance goals? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when there's a delivery guy on the sidewalk traveling just a little too fast on his e-bike? And we've all seen it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't get involved in that. But when we're pushing for numbers, what's going to happen when this Q team goes to stop that guy and he falls and he dies? What's going to happen when there's a deaf guy on a bicycle and he falls and he dies, or an elderly on a bicycle when he falls and he dies? Because I'm sitting here, I'm listening to everything that came out yesterday, and it's the same exact thing. And I'm just going to remind everybody one more time for you, because I don't think you understood. And just because Eric Adams is in and he has the whole system captured in the DAs, and they pick and they choose which one of you is getting indicted and which one of you isn't. And all of that's arbitrary, by the way. It has nothing to do with what's worse or what's right or what's legal. I'm just going to read it one more time. A vehicle pursuit must be terminated whenever the risks to the members of the service and the public outweigh the danger to the community if the suspect is not immediately apprehended. So I'm going to take you guys back last summer. I'm sorry. Was it last summer? I think it was last spring. Excuse me. A narcotics sergeant. He's attempting to stop a drug dealer. Drug dealer happens. Guy's traveling at a high rate of speed on a sidewalk. The sergeant hits the driver of the scooter with a cooler. The driver falls off, dies. What happened to that sergeant? Oh, that's right. He was indicted, right? And what did the job do? They said nothing. Where were your unions? Nowhere. And what's the difference if now you're going after a guy on an e-bike traveling at a high rate of speed down a sidewalk, right? Endangering the lives of everybody. There's no rules for him because city council said, no, he can do whatever he wants. Don't worry about it. We don't need to regulate this. This is technically a vehicle. And you are on this Q team and you need these bikes. You need that apprehension. You need to voucher that e-bike. You need to, give them a DAT that's going to be tossed out immediately, or a C summons that's going to be tossed out immediately. You need that number so bad. And you grab him, he falls off the bike and he dies. Guess what? You get indicted. It's a vehicle.
Rob Nappy makes a great comment here. He says, correct, John. Excuse me. He says, correct, John. And that was a guy who just committed a B felony. What's going to happen to delivery men speeding down the street? That's absolutely right. That's what we've been trying to solidify here. So if you look at vehicle pursuits and you look at the excerpt John just read from the patrol guide, in most cases, the risk does outweigh the reward. It outweighs the totality of circumstances of what could happen to the cops, what could happen to the public. There's only a few extreme circumstances where vehicle pursuits are necessary. And those are a case-by-case basis. Maybe you pulled up behind a car and someone is actively mass shooting people in the street. Obviously, that would be something extreme circumstance. But someone just having a gun in the car, in many cases we see it right now because of the loose and lack of prosecution and lack of being against crime in this city. How many times are we having perpetrators or persons of interest or subjects that are apprehended with firearms, occupants in cars, or just walking in the street, and they're not prosecuted? And those cases are not even making it to a MAP hearing. Those cases are dismissed. So what's going to happen to you in a vehicle pursuit? Absolutely right. And what's interesting about that case is because that cop that sergeant utilized a resource that was outside the realm of the tool set that we normally have. He used and utilized the resources that are in and around him. And there were cops that are actually supporting the rank and file that actually showed opposition to the sergeant. Oh, he shouldn't have used the cooler. Well, I don't understand what difference does it make if he used a cooler, his baton, or didn't use any item, but still tried to stop that perpetrator. He utilized the resources because that's how he was directed by then Chief of Patrol John Shell. He was taking direction as ordered. He was doing his job to stop that perpetrator. I mean, John Shell did say it publicly, and the message stemmed throughout the entire department. And the message was, we're not going to have it anymore. People are not going to evade the police. We're going to stop them. We're going to make that apprehension by any means. What's the difference if you're chasing him and you actually grab him with your hands, or if you're chasing him and you utilize an object and that stops him? But again, it's a sad thing, and that's why I say there's a major problem with the mental health and the culture of policing. And instead of supporting this sergeant, because that was the directive that he received, most of the cops, and the overwhelming majority, because I heard the feedback, they turned their back on this sergeant. And that was now 2023. That was the summer of 2023. So we're getting close to 2 years of that incident. And we haven't heard anything. We haven't heard much change other than rhetoric and gaslighting. So that's why it's very important that any cops that watch this, if you're currently active, that you constantly reiterate to yourself that it's just not worth it, because they're going to leave you behind. And I promise you, I used to tell my cops, and plenty of my cops are watching this right now as we speak, and I used to tell them, you have to be smart, you have to be disciplined, because if you're involved in an investigation, I promise you, it's like you go to a funeral. You go to that investigation alone. Those failed leadership that gave you failed directive, they will not be there for you. It's unfortunate, but you will be there on your own. So keep in mind, these vehicle pursuits did not go away. It's a shame amidst the patrol guide, while simultaneously former chief of department, Jeffrey Madry, had put out the directive and put out the actual patrol guide procedure. So we're getting mixed messages throughout the police department. That's another failure on leadership. Rob, what is the failure when we have different stems of leadership? I mean, if we don't have one directive, how can these cops actually know what their message is and what their mission is?
Yeah, you can't. What happens when you get direction from two different bosses and they contradict each other? You don't follow either one. You got to protect yourself at that point, because now if I do this, I'm going to get yelled at by this. If I do that, I'm going to get yelled at by the other guy. So you can't have conflicting orders, because it just confuses you, and you don't do anything then. So it has to be uniformed. And I think what happens is that they don't talk to each other. One guy has one good idea and the other guy has another good idea, and they just throw these things out there, and they want you to do them. That poor sergeant, he used the resource that he had. I don't remember ever getting training in the police academy that you can't use a cooler to apprehend somebody, or can't do something. You can't trip somebody up. And the results, all right, although tragic, because the guy got injured and hurt, but the sergeant did his job, right? He apprehended the guy. But if you're gonna give two different types of direction, you're not going to get any results, because especially for me, I would be like, I'm not going to do either one. I don't know what to do. It's just ridiculous,
Yeah. We're gonna get through it in this in the press conference, but she mentions, someone asked her a question at the end about the difference between CRT and the Q teams, and she said,
"Let's get there, guy."
all right.
Go,
Let's go watch the video. I'll bring it up after.
No, go. What we say? Go.
No, I was just gonna to Rob's point. If the CO has a robbery pattern in a certain area, and the CO says, "Hey, I want you guys on that in that area," but the Q team is supposed to address a homeless encampment in the other part of the command. Like there's the two different command, two different instructions. You got one from coming out from one PP, and then there's what the CO wants, And I mentioned what Jessica Tisch says in the press conference, because she says the difference between CRT, one of the differences is that the Q teams won't necessarily be responding to 911 jobs. So what I thought, like, what exactly does that mean now? Are they not listening to the radio? Are are they not supposed to address the CO's concerns in a specific area? Like, how's this going to work?
That's 2,000 more guys off patrol. It's going to be great. Everything's good. Everything's fine. The police department's doing well. Crime's down if you believe the numbers. And even if you do believe the numbers, crime's actually up 28% since Eric Adams took office. Major crime. So, all right, let's go. Let's hear. So this is the end of Mushmouth Eric Adams. You know, he doesn't know what he is. He's Republican. He's independent. He's Democrat. He is whoever he is, depending on who he's talking to. So we're going to skip right past him, get right to what Tish is saying.
In our city in the day and make it seem like it defines our city. Let's highlight how well we have turned the city around so New Yorkers can enjoy the city. 65 million tourists, second highest in the city history, have returned to the city.
We just need this. Everything turned around, but we need this. All right, here we go. Here's Jessica Tish. They turned the city around, but they need to create the new Q teams. Got it.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. And as always, thank you for your continued support, the men and women of the NYPD, and of the noble work that they do every day. This is an important day for New York City. This announcement has been a long time coming, but I'll admit it's a bit atypical because today, and this may sound strange coming from the police commissioner, is not about crime. Today is about improving the quality of life for everyday New Yorkers in their neighborhoods, on their blocks, and at their front doors. It's about addressing conditions that have plagued our communities for years and finally having a consistent, coordinated plan at the local level to do something about it. Over the last quarter, the NYPD's work against crime and violence, as you just heard from the mayor, has been exceptional. Shootings at their lowest level ever, the second fewest homicides in recorded history, double-digit crime declines in our precincts, in our subways, and our housing developments. Your NYPD officers are doing an incredible job, and that should never go unnoticed. But New Yorkers are telling us that even as crime falls, that they still don't feel safe. So we're putting together a plan to address illegal parking, abandoned vehicles, homeless encampments, unreasonable noise, out-of-control scooters and e-bikes, open-air drug markets, and more. All of this, especially when it's compounded day after day, gives people the impression of chaos and disorder. It erodes our sense of public safety, and New Yorkers have had enough. Over the past 6 years, calls to 311 centered on quality of life issues have nearly doubled. From 2018 to 2024, complaints about panhandling are up over 2,000%. Calls about homeless encampments are up 500%. Illegal parking complaints are up 200%, and noise complaints have increased by over 100%. New Yorkers are frustrated, and they're pleading for our help. So we are here with Mayor Adams and community partners to tell them that the NYPD hears you. We understand the problem. And now, with the launch of the NYPD's new Quality of Life Division, we are reorganizing our department to address it. Starting on Monday, select officers will be assigned to specialized quality of life teams, or Q teams, and will respond to 311 complaints and address quality of life conditions in their precinct or PSA 7 days a week. They will coordinate with agency partners to resolve these issues efficiently and effectively. And team members have received additional training in the wide range of jobs that they'll handle every day. The 6 pilot commands will be the 40 precinct in the Bronx, the 6075 and PSA 1 in Brooklyn, the 101 in Queens, and here in the 13th precinct in Manhattan. After this pilot phase is complete, the initiative will expand citywide. The division will have a unified structure led by a new chief of quality of life who will report directly to the chief of department. The quality of life chief will oversee the division, manage analytics and administrative support, and coordinate borough-based citywide resources. And under this division, we are centralizing units such as our vehicle recovery team, our smoke shop task force, our encampment team, Community Link, and others. Each Q team will be supervised by a dedicated quality of life sergeant, and staffing will be guided by the command's CO. This initiative involves the reorganization of nearly 2,000 members of our department when it's fully rolled out. But I want to assure New Yorkers right away, this will not affect staffing associated with 911 emergency response. It is no secret that we're short on cops. Over the past several months, we've moved thousands of officers out of desk jobs and back to patrol, and that does help. But ultimately, this is an internal restructuring of personnel already within precincts and a recentering of our approach to public safety. Next month, the division's work will be assessed and evaluated in our first QSTAT meeting, as the mayor said. These monthly meetings will focus on responses to 311, community engagement, and the identification of chronic conditions and strategies to resolve them. And just like ComStat meetings do, QSTAT will provide enhanced accountability, coordination, and accurately measure our progress. QSTAT is the logical evolution of the ComStat revolution that began 32 years ago. We are ushering in the next era of policing in New York City at the right time, in the right places, and for the right reasons. And on that point, I need to be very clear about one thing. Some have criticized this as a return to zero-tolerance policing, which is a complete mischaracterization of what we're doing here. We are addressing quality of life issues, yes, but this is different policy for a different purpose. In 2025, quality of life enforcement is not about preventing more serious crimes. It is about improving quality of life. It's about being responsive to actual community complaints and fixing the very real issues people are dealing with every day. That is why we're doing this. The vast majority of New Yorkers have never been the victim of a crime. In fact, most of them have never even witnessed a crime. But many of them have struggled to find parking because abandoned vehicles are taking up spots in the neighborhood, or had to jump out of the way for an e-bike on the sidewalk, or avoided walking through a park with their kids because people were there openly using drugs. These encounters make people feel less safe. They make you not want to walk through the neighborhood or take the bus or go to the corner store. And it's that feeling that we need to change. Our methods are different from 30 years ago, too. There are no quotas or inflexible activity targets. This is not zero-tolerance policing. When correcting these conditions, officers will have discretion, and discretion starts with engagement. Even the most progressive members of the City Council write letters to my office asking me what the NYPD is going to do about all of the quality of life complaints in their districts. This is about listening to what New Yorkers are telling us and responding to their repeated calls for help. In the nation's largest and most densely populated city, where millions of people share just a few hundred square miles of space, there will always be complaints about noise, about parking, traffic, and disorder. On any given day, our officers are far more likely to respond to a blocked driveway than to a burglary. Because of this, our cops need to be more than just great crime fighters. They need to be great problem solvers. And now, under the mayor's leadership, they will have the training, the tools, and the time to give New Yorkers the quality of life that they have been begging for. In this city, in Mayor Adams' city, results matter. And that is exactly what the quality of life division.
All right, I had enough of that. I can't listen to that. In Mayor Adams City, so everything she says here is an oxymoron. We're gonna focus on quality of life, but there's not gonna be any quotas. We're drilling down on the ComStat revolution by creating another ComStat. Why aren't COs getting called up to the carpet about the quality of life issues that are happening in their commands already in ComStat? Isn't that the basis of ComStat? Or are you telling us that you have a huge problem with major crimes, so you guys have not focused on the quality of life for over 3 years, and now it's completely out of hand, which is why the 311 calls are up 2,000%. Like, does anyone realize what she's saying here? She's telling you New York City's completely out of control, while at the same time telling you crime's falling. New York City's completely out of control. We don't have time for any of this stuff. So we have to create this whole other division to this whole other stat to focus on these little issues. But don't worry, this isn't going to affect patrol. We're just pulling 2,000 more guys out of a already short-staffed NYPD. Like none of it, like literally every topic she went on, she contradicted herself in the same sentence. So I don't know. Like I'm listening to this and I'm just hearing you're recreating Comstat and you're misusing resources further. That's what I'm hearing. This should all be addressed in Comstat. This should all be addressed at a precinct level. This should all be addressed. Commanding officers that have been getting promoted for absolutely no reason the last 5 years, in my opinion. No reason. I haven't seen anybody that deserve to rise to the rank of chief. I haven't. I haven't decided to deserve anyone that deserves a promotion. Crime is through the roof. Disorder's through the roof. And here's our solution. We're going to give you the same thing that we did 3 years ago when we created CRT and just rebrand.
Prime time at 1, 2, 3, 4. And before I say that, John, you're spot on. Prime time at 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm with you, brother. This is nothing more than a bedtime story because it's almost like, hey, you want the real story or the bedtime story? She's giving us the bedtime story. And Patrick Donahue, I'm with you. A bunch of Z's. I'm trying to stay awake through this. To me, this is like Nightmare on Elm Street. She's like Freddy Krueger. Like, this is a bad dream. I'm going to infect you with all this bullshit ideas in your dream. Because that's what's going on. She's putting us all to sleep and trying to make us tired and then kind of brainwash you to believe what she's saying. I mean, imagine you owned a car dealership and the reason why I always use the car dealership because many of these people should work for a car dealership, especially Michael Kemper. But Michael Kemper left for a better dealership. They're selling you nonsense here. Could you imagine you work for a dealership and you have the highest rating? You're selling so many cars. Your salesman is so great. The system that you have is working so great. You're making so much money, but bam, we're going to come up with a new system on how to sell cars. That's what they're telling you. Crime is great. We have everything under control, but somehow, even with that, people don't feel safe. So we have to create something new. In my opinion, based on what she said, this is almost, you know what? Not even almost. This is, Marlon, I hope you agree with me because we talk about rebranding. I think this is a cover-up for the CRT team. This, to me, this is a complete cover-up and damage control for CRT because that DOI report, if that ever goes any further and actually start to peel back at it, at all the failures, they need to cover it up. So how do they cover it up? Let's rebrand it with a new chief, with a new name, but doing the same job. Didn't CRT, weren't they supposed to address e-bikes and scooters throughout the city? But now it's a different mission, right? Because what she's saying is interesting. I guess we're going to target different people. She just told you that. We're going to target the nice people in New York City because most of these people have never been arrested. You know, just quality of life infractions that just make the city uncomfortable. There's a lot of layers to peel back here. That was a hell of a bedtime story. I mean, I should read that to my kids because that was putting me to sleep. That is complete nonsense. She is full of shit. You know, and then again, she's talking about how under the leadership of Mayor Eric Adams, really? If she had any credibility or any sense of integrity, it's gone. The credibility of Mayor Eric Adams, his leadership has been nothing but an epic fail. Such a failure that no longer can he run with the Democratic Party. He has to run as an independent. This, to me, is complete nonsense. I think this is a cover-up for the failures of CRT, and I'm saying it right now.
Yeah, it's a cover-up for other things, too. So whereas in the past, it's been like every decade we rebrand something, right? Now we're rebranding something that came out 2 years ago, okay? And I'm not just talking about the CRT guys, because the CRT guys are the foot soldiers, but there's an entire system that underpinned what CRT did. And it's something called the community link, right? So the community link was basically it's on their own on the website. They said that the community link creates community improvement coalitions, which are interagency quality of life improvement hubs. So basically, at certain precincts, they would get together, say, Department of Health, the Department of Mental Health, Department of Buildings, Sanitation, Parks. All these agencies would come together with a PD, and they would go and target a quality of life issue. In examples include the Roosevelt Avenue, the issues that they had last year. So they had all these people come together and then target Roosevelt Avenue, right? Now, underpinning all of this, according to the city itself, on the website for the community link, is a centralized database. They call it a centralized repository to record, address, monitor, and continually evaluate complex quality of life issues that require multi-agency response. So that's very curious, because what does that exactly mean now? Well, what's in the centralized database? Because that seems separate from 311, no? So what's also interesting here now is the guy who helped create the community link, which is this chief now, Chief William Glenn. He is now going to be the Q team's chief that's reporting to Chell. So again, this is not just a rebrand of the CRT. The actual Q team foot soldiers on the ground in the precinct are the CRT guys. They're a rebrand of the CRT guys. But underpinning all of that is going to be this community link program. And Tish specifically mentions she mentions that this is a multi-agency response in that press conference also, which again alludes to this. So my question for all of this is, why do we need all this? Because during the crack era, the 90s and the Giuliani administration, they cleaned up New York, and they didn't need all of this. So I just find it very fascinating that now we need a centralized repository to do all of these things, when you could easily do it by simply empowering the precinct commanders like they did in the past. So I think there's a lot more going on underneath there. And whenever Eric Adams talks about access to data, like he did in 2022 at the Milken Institute, whenever he talks about that, the hair raises on the back of my neck, because this is what the World Economic Forum and the globalists have been talking about for the last couple of years. They want to merge databases that traditionally aren't connected, And as we've seen during the coup, I don't think it's a good idea that government have access to certain databases that we had walls up against in the decades prior, before any of this happened. So I think there's a lot more going on here.
I see when, like, Rob Nappy spoke earlier, says watching her talk. If you're ahead, that's like when we used to go to Police Management Institute, they would bring guests in to talk, and you would fall asleep at the desk, right? If your head doesn't hit the table listening to her talk, I mean, you got a better attention span than anybody ever met. I can't even listen to her anymore. But she talks about, like, what's more important, walking down the street and seeing an abandoned car, or a guy in a scooter, or shots being fired, or a gang of protesters running down the block where you can't even get off the block, right? So really, that matters so much. And then she talks about, it has not relative to crime. The mission, I believe the mission statement of the NYPD is the reduction of crime. So if any of your things, any of your programs are there not to reduce crime, what are you really doing? It just doesn't make sense. It's like, why don't you just give all cops? I mean, it was from a Seinfeld episode, but give all cops brooms, and when they're not busy chasing criminals, they can sweep the streets so the streets are clean. It's like, why is PD involved in this? Is it if it's not really a police matter? It just adds on layers of work. It adds on layers of administration and bureaucracy, and it just is. If the core reason to do this isn't the reduction of crime, I think it's ridiculous. And when you talk about, like, drug people doing drugs on the side on the court, that's criminal, in my opinion. How's that not? So what are you really doing? What is your function? And even Commissioner Bratton, who I'm really not a big fan of at all, puts in one of his tweets yesterday. he said, what's old is new again. But she's defending that. She's saying this is not what's old is what's new again. This is a new concept, which is lunacy in itself. So
yeah, the whole thing makes zero sense to me, dude. It's just I'm sitting here watching it, and it's like they just keep putting this shiny ball up there for the media. Oh, look, crime's down this month, 30%. You know, it's like the same thing. If you watch every year, it's literally the same thing being unleashed over and over and over again. Here's where it gets really good, right? Because I beat the media up a little bit. Not everybody. The New York Posts of the world, all the sycophant Adams papers that are out there, the ones all portraying Jessica Tisch as the next Theodore Roosevelt. There are a few reporters out there asking questions, 100%. So let's get to the press conference portion of this. I think some good questions get asked here. So let's listen to that, and we'll weigh in on those questions.
And I think scary thing for most New Yorkers is encountering an emotionally disturbed person. I think that's probably what's scaring most New Yorkers right now, particularly on the subway. So talk to me about how you can address that specific issue, because I think when people think quality of life, they think about that very scary situation.
Absolutely. And we recently announced that we are providing completely new overhauled training to every member of the service at the NYPD and how to address that very issue when they have police encounters with emotionally disturbed persons. We are starting with our academy class that is in right now. This is highly tactical training, not just the background on mental illness or mental health crisis, but how our officers should approach and handle situations when they encounter people suffering from severe mental illness. And I also want to mention on the last question that you asked the mayor, it is not just the New York City Police Department that is engaged in quality of life enforcement in New York City. Virtually every agency in the city has a role to play. As you know, previously, I served as sanitation commissioner, and there we dealt with quality of life concerns all the time. They were different: dirty street, dirty sidewalk, trash left out early, things that people call 311 to complain about. And one of the early things that the mayor tasked all agency commissioners with doing was developing a CompStat-like approach to quality of life issues. We did that at the Department of Sanitation, and this QStat that we are rolling out here at the NYPD is just a continuation of that. So I don't want to give the impression that the NYPD will be handling every single quality of life issue that people call 311 about. We will be the eyes and ears and obviously work with agency partners to address concerns as appropriate.
So that portion is really interesting to me because, the guy brings up a great point. He's like, people are afraid in the streets in New York. Unlike what Jessica Tisch is telling you, that most New Yorkers don't ever see a crime in their life, which is most New Yorkers see numerous crimes every day, regardless of the borough they're in. So, like, that was a complete lie that she said. But this guy brings up the great point. Like, what we're seeing and the thing that are most scary is the mental illness. The EDPs just roaming around the subway and on the streets in New York. And I mean, you could go through the New York Post for the last 3 weeks and you'll see maniac stabs woman in the head with a knife. Maniac push woman in front of a train. Maniac does this. Maniac does that. I mean, and that's the stuff that really scares New Yorkers. And where is this team helping out with that? And that's why it's always like the shiny new ball, right? It's like, oh, yeah, look at this. Don't worry about what's going on here. Don't worry about all the headlines. Don't worry about all the people that have taken serious injuries or died as a result of our lack of ability to address this mental illness crisis that's happening in New York City, that New York City created and has done nothing about. And what is her answer? Her answer is, we're providing up-to-date new training. Now, when I came in the police academy in 2004, we were provided with up-to-date new training to deal with emotionally disturbed people. And every year of my career, and probably every major incident that happens, I had some new form of updated training. Until today, the NYPD's response for everything is we're updating our training. And everyone sits there and goes, "Oh, they got new training. Oh, wow." And I like, at what point do New Yorkers go, "All right, enough of your going back to your training. What does that training look like? Show us what it is. How is it different than the training that you gave people over 20 years ago?" Because I guarantee you it's not. I guarantee you. What do you guys think about EDP and they're giving them new training?
Awesome. So first of all, I think that working for the NYPD, when it comes to emotionally disturbed persons, it's baptism by fire. No matter what training we had, and our training is pretty good when it comes to emotionally disturbed persons, it's baptism by fire because the voluminous and the denseness of the city, you're dealing with people on a constant basis. There's no one better than handling emotionally disturbed persons. And emotionally disturbed persons, it's relevant. We have different levels. We have people that are just completely out of control, that are experiencing a side delirium, that they're naked in the streets, screaming and yelling, and you have someone who's just having a bad day, moping around. We have different levels, and no one handles emotionally disturbed persons better than the NYPD. There should always be up-to-date training. This is absolutely ridiculous. And I would think if you're forming Q teams, quality of life, that emotionally disturbed persons or homelessness and mental illness that's encompassed and succumb the city is a quality of life condition and a quality of life issue for your so-called Q teams. Why don't we just call the Q teams QRT teams? Because to me, CRT is now QRT. That's really what the name is. This is just more gaslighting. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this, to me, it's almost like a medical doctor that doesn't want to find what's the root cause of the problem. Let's just treat the symptoms. How about instead of us getting more training on how to deal with emotionally disturbed persons, why don't we figure out how do we get these emotionally disturbed persons off the streets? How do we get these people actually housed somewhere and actually find out what's the problem? Why do we have mental illness rampant in the street? Why do we have people in the street that have committed some heinous crimes that are still in the street? Why don't we figure that problem out? Obviously, that problem, we need to work and figure out what's going on with our legislators as far as actually prosecuting. We need to support our cops so they can actually do the job, so they can actually involuntarily remove emotionally disturbed persons and not get a substantiated civilian complaint. And Rob, you may be able to attest to this. What I saw in the latter part of my career is the hesitance and the reluctance by emotionally disturbed person ESU to get involved with emotionally disturbed persons, because involuntarily removing emotionally disturbed persons was getting not just the cops, the ESU members, they were getting substantiated civilian complaints. So why don't we address the problem? And the problem is the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And that's why after hearing Jim Walden on several different issues, I've been intrigued by him. I've been intrigued by him because he's willing to bring back workers in New York City that have been affected by this vaccine mandate. And the other thing he said recently on an interview with Sal Greco is that he wants to remove the Civilian Complaint Review Board and start to get to a Department of Public Integrity. So moving in a different direction, to me, that's something new. This is just rebranding. This here is just giving you a bedtime story, and it's just treating the symptoms, and it's not treating the problem.
Well, what would scare you more, walking by an abandoned car, or being on a subway platform and have an EDP behind you, and the fear that that person is going to push you into onto the tracks? And how many people I know now, I tell them, don't even go close to the edge of the train. You used to look down the track to see if the train was coming, right? Don't even do that. Stand, put your back to the wall, and be prepared to fight, because if anybody grabs you, and they're going to attempt to throw you on the tracks, it's dangerous. Now, mental illness always been a problem within the city, right? And I've been on numerous task forces where we've spoken about it. And EDPs is one of the biggest jobs ESU handles. Back in the old days, it was like over 100,000 a year that ESU would respond to. I mean, there's somebody in the chat, John Latanzio. He knows, he's truck 3. That was the major amount of jobs, and he was a great E-man and always did a great job. But ESU got additional training. They went to emergency psychological training, and it was in conjunction with John Jay College. So you had professors, and it was for identification of different types of emotional problems, so schizophrenia, all different things, and the ability to talk and bring people down and not to elevate the situation. But when they talk about training, and retraining the police department, they always say we're going to start in the academy. That doesn't make sense to me. The guy in the academy is going to be there for another 6 months. Let's start with the guys on the street, right? Let's start in the guys. And if the Q team's going to handle these problems, start with them. But start with the people that are going to have the interaction first. Don't talk to the guys that are going to do it 6 months down the road. That's a backwards way to do it. And the other thing, like you said, yeah, ESU, they really, know they're trained. They know to wait. They know to talk the person out. And eventually, if you wait long enough, you can talk anybody out, right? That's been my experience, And they are hesitant, but they still do their job, right? The problem is the guys on patrol are really hesitant. Well, I've been on jobs where I've been called to a barricaded EDP. We walked in. The guy was standing in the kitchen, and we all walked in. It's like, where is he barricaded? Oh no, he refuses to come with us. Well, you're a police officer. Go take him into custody if he refuses. So I mean, it's all about the training. And like you said, what's the main problem? Yeah, getting those EDPs off the street, getting them the mental health that they need. Because what happens is the system fails. You take somebody to the hospital, the guy at the hospital evaluates them, whether it's medically, and then they're taken to the psychological ward, and then that interview's done, everything else. The guy says, "I was upset," blah blah blah, and he's out. He's immediately released. So the problem is never corrected. It's just it's a constant revolving door. That's the real problem.
Yeah, Rob. We the problem is these band-aid approaches to everything. Instead of getting a citywide policy so that we don't have to keep addressing the same problems over and over and over again. A couple of days ago there was a town hall with one of these town halls that Adams does every week or 2 weeks, right? And one of the complaints was of derelict vehicles that were parked on one of the streets. And Kaz jumped in and he says, "We're gonna take care of it right now," and Kaz put up this video on his Twitter himself. So apparently after they go to the scene and they get the vehicle towed, and they said they got the guys from services that he might have needed. But I watched that and I'm like, okay, great, you did a good job there. Now what about tomorrow? And what about the next day after that? You just put a Band-Aid on it, and eventually that Band-Aid is going to wear off and fall off, and the problem's going to be there. We need a citywide policy from government, and this is some things that like are outside of the purview of police, because we need the other parts of government to do their job, so police don't have to keep doing these same things again, and no matter if Kaz does that today and tomorrow new vehicles are there, then the community looks at that as like, oh, you didn't do anything, so what's the point? But so now let's look at what is touted as a success for the chief who's now in charge of this unit. So the chief, this chief William Glenn, as I mentioned before, was a part of the community link program, which kind of underpins all of this, right? As one of the successes, they tout Roosevelt Avenue, right? So if Roosevelt Avenue is a success, why is the assemblyman yesterday calling for additional help from the feds and from the DEA and from units that could handle organized crime, that could target the prostitution and other rings in that area? And now I get that Roosevelt Avenue has always been a problem, but you can't tout that you've successfully solved the problem there if the problem is still existing there. So again, to Ron's point, what are we doing here? What problem are we solving here? We're just taking a Band-Aid approach to everything, and that's not solving the actual issues. What brought us out of the crack era during the crack wars in the 90s was solving the issues so we could move forward. We need to solve the issues so we could get past it, not do these piecemeal approaches to everything.
I just want to say before John goes, Ron Lason's spot on. They won't remove homeless off the street, but they remove people living in campers, basically RVs who had shelter. Let's remove all these RVs. That's more important, so that Kaz gets a moment, on camera. John, sorry, brother.
So Tish is, she's basically saying, "Oh no, that's totally different than these Q teams," but it's not. Dealing with EDPs, the disorderly conduct, they're not going to respond to disorderly calls. Like the Q teams aren't responding to disorderly mail calls, disorderly group calls. I mean, what are they doing? That's not quality of life. So when we talk about that, and you talk about they can't tout Roosevelt Avenue as a success because it's been a failure, I agree with you. I mean, we called it out on the show exactly what was going to play out. They were going to displace it temporarily, and it was going to come right back. It was just going to move out. They actually didn't do anything. The whole thing was a dog and pony show. The whole thing was a public relations campaign. And now you got Hiram Monserrati, however you say his name, calling for the feds to handle it. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, time out. If the police department did such a good job, Hiram, and if you went and you got 9,000 signatures, why'd you go and get 8,000 signatures for Eric Adams to be the mayor, to be on the Democratic line? But he wouldn't accept it because he knew he needed to run as an independent, because Zohan Mamdani actually will crush him, and Andrew Cuomo will crush him in the Democratic primary. But still, Hiram's sitting there, I need the feds to help. Wait, time out. Does anybody remember what 42nd Street looked like? I do. Do you remember the prostitution? I do. Do you remember the drug dealing? I do. Why is Eric Adams incapable of doing that on Roosevelt Avenue? Why is the NYPD no longer capable of handling Roosevelt Avenue in the same manner that we handled 42nd Street? What's the difference here? Like, I'm not seeing why now all of a sudden the NYPD is incapable of locking up drug dealers, stopping drug trafficking and prostitution. Is there some laws that I'm not aware of? Because there are things that have changed 100%. There's nothing preventing us from stopping and getting warrants for drugs or locking up prostitutes or anything like that. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. There's nothing stopping us from going in and finding these businesses. The only thing stopping us is the politics of the city that Jessica Tisch has supported her entire life. So has Eric Adams. They've supported this progressive, hands-off approach to policing. And now you got Hiram Monserrati saying that we need the feds in. And while at the same time, Jessica Tisch, Kaz Daughtry, and Eric Adams are telling you they succeeded on Roosevelt Avenue. But that's what they do, dude. I mean, look at COVID. It was look at the New York City's response to COVID. It was a complete failure. They didn't save lives. They didn't help anybody. They shut businesses. They lost residents. They destroyed lives. They stole generational wealth from people. And at the same time, who didn't get COVID because of them? Because of the mandate, because you couldn't stay, you got to stand in the spots in the grocery store, and you had to put your mask on before you went and sat 2 feet away. Who didn't get COVID? Everyone in New York City got COVID. But yet, talk to Eric Adams. It was a success. Thousands of businesses shuttered. Hundreds of thousands of tax-paying New York City residents fled. Teachers lost. Now he wants to hire 3,700 teachers. How many teachers did he fire? Because they wouldn't take a vaccine that they didn't need. How many teachers did he fire? Now, but when you talk to him, it's a success. So Roosevelt Avenue's a success, dude. It's a success by their standard. It doesn't matter that they failed. And again, the CRT team's been a success, even though they were supposed to do the same exact thing as what she's telling you they're going to do. So to me, I'm like, I disagree. I think that this is what they do. And just to go back on what's it called, on what you were talking about with the removal of the tows, like them removing it at that community meeting. So the guy's complaining about these trucks being parked, and Kaz runs out and says, yeah, we're going to get on that right after that. Me and you, we're going over there. We're going to tow those vehicles. And then he does a whole fancy video on the X account that was supposedly his personal account, but now it's been changed to his official account with all these flags and all these catch-up self-promotion of himself, Kaz Daughtry, deputy mayor, blah, 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 all this stuff. And Ron Layson said it best. That wasn't staged at all. That was and you're 100% right, Ron. That was 100% staged because everything in this administration is staged. It's not real. None of this. This Q team and Q stat, that is a huge waste of millions of dollars and taxpayer funds to get absolutely zero result.
You know, John, I think you nailed it. I think that everything in this administration, particularly with the NYPD, is they give it a name or they give it a color or they give it a face. They basically put a mask on it, right? You talked about the vaccine mandate, no pun intended, but they put a mask on it. But really what's behind that is something different. And everything is staged. It's all a photo op, right? We saw photo ops for the operation on Roosevelt Avenue. We see photo ops, Kaz Daughtry, moving campers, RVs. We see this is a photo op. It's always a photo op to sell you something, to make you believe. It's gaslighting, right? John, don't we talk about it all the time? It's gaslighting. The whole entire theme of this administration, as Marlon coined, perception management, comes down to the umbrella of gaslighting. That's what they're doing. They want to make you believe that, no, this is not what you're looking at. You feel unsafe, but how could you feel unsafe? Crime is so good. Crime is doing so well. The percentages are down so much. But since you don't feel safe, we're going to implement these other teams to address your concerns because that's what we do. That's what Eric Adams says all the time. Am I right, John? What does Eric Adams say? I'm doing this for you. Crime's great, but we're going to do this for you. We're going to make this teams because that's what you want. You want quality of life addressed. And that's a great point that with this gaslighting, what are they really doing? Are these Q teams going to address all these issues, or are they just going to be boxed into these small issues? Because according to Jessica Tisch, and obviously we can't relate to Jessica Tisch, and neither could the rank and file. She's a billionaire heiress. I highly doubt that she walks past abandoned vehicles or emotionally disturbed persons on the subway. I find it hard to believe that when she's being chauffeured around with her detail or with her limos, that she's going through the subway. So Jessica Tisch has never felt, in my opinion, maybe she has if she took it upon herself, but based on what we know, I don't think she's ever felt what it's like to be an everyday New Yorker that's not a billionaire heiress, that maybe only has a couple of dollars in their pocket. But you're absolutely right, Ron. Staged, that's what they do. Stage photo ops. Even when we go back to what happened at the campuses, those were stage photo ops. It's all about perception management, perception control, gaslighting, giving you a different appearance. S.E. Gittin says it here. It's called collapsing the NYPD. Yeah, the NYPD has been collapsed. I mean, it's just let's constantly what we do. I mean, if anyone likes to do work, I love to work with my hands. Anyone that's ever put in a floor, right? You have to take out the old floors. And if you start to scrape an old linoleum floor and you scrape that off and you find out there's a floor underneath that, then you scrape and you find out someone put a floor underneath that. You scrape and you find wonderboard underneath that. And that's what they're doing. No one's actually just ripping this whole thing apart and put what needs in place. Let's paint it a different color, right? We painted it blue. We'll put red on top of it. We'll put another color. But when you peel it back, it's all just the same. And it's all nonsense.
All they do is keep saying it's better. They keep reiterating, oh, we did this, it's better. We reduced this, it's better. So they keep, like Marlon always says, perception management, right? They just keep telling you it's better. And if you say it enough, people will end up thinking, oh yeah, it is better. I wonder if these Q teams, when they go around, what are they going to do about displacement, right? Because if they don't correct the problem, all they're going to do is displace it. When a bunch of people have they're hanging out doing drugs or whatever, and they know they're going to get pushed from here, they're going to go to the next command. They're going to go back and forth. So there's going to be all this displacement. How are they actually stopping these quality of life problems? And what's the metric to make sure that those quality of life problems are stopped and not just pushed around? Because that's the real problem. You can continually say, oh, look, we just cleaned up Roosevelt Avenue and it's great. And then you drive down 2 weeks later and it's back to the same thing. Yeah, it was all great that day when you came down with the camera and you did all the dog and pony show, but now it's back, right? So how many times have that's happened where they've done things and it's great and they show the camera and then that's it, So The other thing is it's not fair to the COs. It's going to be like, hey, if after we leave, you got to make sure that stays clean or whatever, that you continue it, and then the resources aren't there anymore, right? They're taking the 2,000 people from, I don't know where they're getting them from, and then they're going to say, well, after we come in and we clean up, I guarantee you at QStat, it's going to be, we cleaned up this area. Now it's your responsibility to make sure it stays that way. Well, I don't have the resources. I don't have the personnel to do that. So how am I going to do that? And then they're going to come back in, and then they're going to say we cleaned it up again. Now they're going to embarrass the CO. It's going to be a continual, a round table of pushing things around and pushing the chess pieces, but never really finishing the game.
Yeah, so let's go a little deeper into this press conference. Let's see the other questions.
Commissioner, how will you measure success, and what guardrails will be in place to avoid some of what we've heard in the past with critics of this is policing by numbers or pretext to conduct a stop and search?
So the CompStat book, Rocco, which we've had for over 30 years in New York City, looks at the 7 major crimes. And it goes through the numbers. What were the numbers last year? What are the numbers this year? 7-day period, 28-day period, year-to-date period. We're doing the same thing with our quality of life stuff that comes in through 311. So how many calls did we get, for example, for abandoned vehicles last year versus this year, in the 7-day period, in the 28-day period, in the year-to-date period? So it is very much modeled after the CompStat book, but instead will be driven by the numbers from 311.
As far as the guardrails that might be in place to avoid policing by numbers, so to speak?
Yeah, so in this initiative, as I mentioned previously, there are no quotas. There are no activity targets. Our Q teams will be managed by sergeants focused on quality of life who will report to the special operations lieutenant in the precinct. And then ultimately, all of that work will be overseen by a new citywide chief of quality of life. The idea here is to put focus on it, to give a division responsibility and ownership of it, to oversee it. And we believe that that is how we are going to drive results rather than based on just looking at numbers.
Does anyone believe for 1 second that there's not going to be numbers? Because she keeps saying there's not going to be targets or enforcement goals, and they're going to measure success based upon the amount of 311 calls. I don't think that's how they're measuring success. They're going to obviously, they're going to try to get that down, the number of 311 calls, and they're going to have some very inventive ways on how to eliminate the amount of 311 calls that happened the year prior. But that's not how they're going to measure success. They're going to measure success based off of activity. Am I off by saying that? What do you guys think about that?
John, actually, this is pretty slick, right? I think it's pretty slick in the sense that she's back to gaslighting. And I hate to constantly use that term, but I think that it's the reality. It's back to gaslighting, when she's like almost trying to tell people like there's no issues out there. The biggest issue right now is abandoned cars. So it's almost like we have to, Marlon, I love it. I mean, we got to say it, perception management. Let's manage your perception. You're not really seeing crime out there. You're not seeing all these problems. We have it under control. Crime is down. But really what's the problem is these abandoned cars. So you can't even walk around New York City. It must be abandoned cars on sidewalks. So they've almost, it's like they've affected your minds. I talk about the brainwashing. They want to brainwash you, tie you out with a bedtime story, and then you're like, oh, wow. Maybe it's the red car theory, right? You're going to walk around and like, oh, yeah, there are abandoned cars. And that's what they're doing. I mean, so, John, I think, and when you talk about quotas and numbers, yeah, there's a number on everything. There's no doubt about it. There is going to be a number on this, and they've already decided what that number is going to be. I would put my life on it. Marlon, I see you shaking your head. You gotta think this is absolutely just complete brainwashing.
Well, yeah. In the same, she says there's no quotas, but she uses the term activity targets. So pay attention to that word. That's the new that's the new wording for it. There's a new euphemism for it. So also in a press release for it, they also tout the analytics of the system underpinning it, but also Community Link, which is part of it, is a centralized repository of data. So we have all this data, we have all this analytics, and there's not going to be numbers. Okay. No, there's going to be plenty numbers here, and because there's no citywide policy, and the NYPD is taking a band-aid approach to everything, right? Because there's no overall policy for this, there will be numbers, because in the absence of a policy that solves these problems, everything eventually goes down to getting these productivity goals, or as they will be called now, activity targets.
There has to be numbers, okay? This is what's going to happen. If she's going to compare 311 calls from the previous 28-day period, year period, or whatever, if you see that there's not a decrease in the 311 numbers for the previous year, then they're going to ask you, what did you do to address that condition? So unless you addressed it with summonses or I mean, that's the only thing you really address it with, right? So that's the only way you can reduce those type of things. So if you didn't address it with the summonses, they're going to be like, well, what did you do? You absolutely did nothing. You have the same problem at this time period, and you have the same problem here. So there's been nothing done to address it. So they're going to say you're not putting what we normally call the dots on the pins on the problem. So how do you do that? Well, obviously you got to give summonses, right? That's you got to cause them to not want to do that crime or that noise complaint or anything else ever again. I also see them scrunching the numbers. They're going to be like, well, there were multiple calls at that location, so that should only count as maybe one incident, right? Because it was the same thing. So they're gonna play with the numbers, and oh, look, we reduced it by this because it was the cluster, but it was all the same person too. It was the same 311 call, everything else. They're going to play games, and absolutely unequivocally, summonses and enforcement is going to play a hand in that.
Yeah, no, and Richie O, like, this is one of the inventive things that they're gonna do. So Richie O calls it right here. This is exactly one of the things, and this is what they did with that NCO program as well. The Q team will give out their cell numbers and office numbers and tell citizens to call them to reduce the 311 calls. And that is exactly 100%. You nailed it, brother. That is one of the tactics they will do to reduce the 311 calls. Let's go a little further into this interview. There's still some good questions in here.
Good morning, Commissioner. What does this mean for the CRT teams, which were obviously taking the lead on this issue? Is the CRT being disbanded? If so, when? If not, how are their duties going to change given this initiative? And also, are the Q teams, are they going to be wearing special uniform, khaki pants, or anything like that?
No special uniform at this time for the quality of life teams, but it's a good question that you raise. CRT has been, the community response teams have been responsive to community concerns. Oftentimes, those concerns that they're responsive to are related to have some nexus to violence. So it could be gun violence or robbery patterns on scooters, stolen vehicles, things that the precinct or the borough is hearing from the community, but oftentimes what CRT is called to have a real nexus to violence. The Q teams, obviously, they may have to deal with violence, but the things that we're talking about with the Q teams are very much driven by 311, i.e., reports of non-violent issues. And that's how to distinguish the two.
Did anyone understand? Did she differentiate? Did she answer clearly that the CRT team's not going to be disbanded? And two, did she differentiate what the difference between a Q team and a CRT team is? Because I heard the same. She said connected to violence.
John, she didn't answer.
We just heard that all of this is connected to violence. Well, this is what we know. This is why we police quality of life issues and minor crime. So I have no idea what that response was. That was a great question. And I don't believe that she answered it, in my opinion.
John, I think it was a great question. I'm glad that they actually had the balls to ask it. To me, I mean, she didn't answer the question, right? So, is CRT being disbanded? Is it not? I think really what he wanted to ask is it being rebranded as the QRT teams, but he didn't ask that, and I don't think she addressed the question at all. So clearly, to me, it's exactly what we said. The CRT is going to be rebranded into QRT, and it's interesting. She said, well, then the difference is they're not going to address violence, but they may have to sometimes address violence. So I'm ready for the next press conference and the next podcast where we say, wow, let's look back at the tape where she said they're not going to address violence, and yet we now have QRT teams involved in numerous vehicle pursuits that ended up in fatalities, God forbid, if it actually happens. I hope I'm wrong. Or someone seriously injured and likely to die because of the vehicle pursuits they're involved in, or other tactics utilized because they're addressing violence, because it's the same horse in different color. John, she doesn't address it at all. I mean, that was just more tap dancing around. I almost want to go back later on. I want to watch that again. Just watch that complete tap dancing where she learned to tap dance from. Eric Adams. That was not answering the question at all. I think it solidifies everything we said here, that the CRT teams is really rebranded into QRT.
I think it reminds me of the Biden and Trump debate. Like, I didn't understand what she just said, and I don't think she understands what she said. That's how I interpreted that whole thing right there.
Yeah, you saw her eyes flutter, and she was like, she got real nervous with that. You know, it was like there was a bunch of different things there. No new uniforms, no new uniforms. Oh, okay. Is the CRT team going to be disbanded? I didn't hear a clear answer, man. And again, I don't see how you're keeping all of these different units up when you have nobody on patrol. I don't see how that's working. I personally, I still say the time is short for CRT, in my opinion. I don't think, whatever it is, even if they last another year or two, time's short. That is not I don't think you're going to see khaki pants running around unless Eric Adams squeaks through. I don't see that whole thing lasting. Other thing I think that's important to highlight, this is William Glenn. He was standing in the background an entire interview. He's going to be your new 3-star chief of quality of life division, right? New citywide chief. I found it weird that he wasn't brought up to the stage to answer questions or be asked questions or introduced. I personally believe that if he was a black male or a female or anyone that they could paint as somebody of diversity, he would have been brought center stage to be introduced, told his bio. We didn't see that in this press conference. What do you guys think about that? Like, why wasn't Glenn interviewed? Is he not competent enough to take questions, or like what's the problem? Because I mean, if we're going to put somebody in charge of this, I think he should have been the one who's more nuanced in it than Eric Adams or Commissioner Tisch or even his real boss, Kaz Daughtry.
I gotta laugh, John. I gotta laugh, but you're right. I mean, that's the problem here, right? They can't say he's the first of anything. This doesn't fit the DEI mission, and it's not a sexy story for Eric Adams. And also, he may not be prepared to do the same gaslighting that Jessica Tisch has done, because clearly, I mean, based on what you heard, John, do you think we're right that this is a rebrand, or you think that there's going to be CRT at the same time simultaneously with QRT? Because she didn't answer the question, but to me, I think that it is going to be a rebrand, and I think what they're going to do is kind of phase the CRT team out. I don't think they'll just completely get rid of it right away, so they just give the appearance, but I think they'll kind of fizzle it out and kind of weed out, almost like when they weed people off, weed them off medicine. You think I'm right? I think that's the way they'll do it, based on what you said.
The connection to violence, I think through attrition. I think through attrition, CRT team's going to be there. And Need says I'm reaching. I don't think I'm reaching at all. I think that when I watch all of these other bureaus be introduced, I've seen the chief up front and center stage. I see Glenn standing in the background doing nothing, and Shell scratching his ear like this. I want to know why that was. Why didn't the media wasn't curious? Nobody was curious. Oh, is he running it? Why is he here? What does he do? Why does he get paid?
Well, I'll take a different stance on this. I think they don't want to ask him questions because that they don't want questions being asked of him, because then we start digging into community link and the questions that it raises, right? So I've said before that Tish was brought in to use AI to kind of micromanage the department while they have declining budgets for the city and declining city services, largely due to the decline in manpower. So they're going to use AI databases and analytics and all this stuff to try and micromanage the quality of life. They believe that if they could act quickly on the data, that they can go around the loss of manpower. And there are questions that this brings up, right? In terms of community link. The question is, if you have all these city agencies that all their data is going into a centralized repository, right? There's some civil liberty concerns that if police now have access to information that they traditionally didn't, because there are traditionally walls in between it. And I don't think they want questions asked. Additionally, I don't think they want questions asked of were there actual successes from community living, because then the way the entire program works, kind of like I'm confused, because we have a community board, community councils that report to the COs, right? Right? Don't they have community council meetings where COs go there and they discuss the community problems? So why do we need community ambassadors now for the community link program, right? And my other issue is that if we go back to that Kaz, what Kaz did at that town hall meeting, right? Think of how many layers of failure and missed messages there are in that, right? Now, I was never a supervisor, but I did patrol. I had a sector, and I like to think like every sector, every guy who has a steady sector, you're the CO of that sector, right? If dudes are doing crap in your corner, that's my corner, you know. So if there was a derelict vehicle and a community had complaints in that sector, why did the sectors not know about it? Did the supervisors not know about it? Did the group commander not know about it? Did the CO not know about it? And if they did know about it, why did it take the town hall meeting to get it done? You know, why can't the CO, if there are problems with getting it done due to like lack of manpower in the precinct to do it, why couldn't he make a phone call and this get done? Why do we need a dog and pony show to do something that could be done on the local level? In the mid-teens, the whole reengineering by de Blasio and Bratton, they kept talking about empowering local cops and local awareness to handle local problems within the precinct, right? And now what we're seeing is the direct opposite. We're seeing centralization centralization outside the command to handle problems inside the command. And that just doesn't work, you know. It needs to be decentralized. It needs to be empowering people on the ground level closest to the problems to solve the problems. And in order to do that, we need to put those 2,000 guys back on patrol, so guys on patrol have the time to dig into all these issues, talk to neighbors, talk to the people in the precincts to know the exact problems there. So why do we need the dog and pony show is my question.
I think Glenn's not put up there. I agree with you, John. He doesn't fit the bill. That's the first That's the first thing. The second thing is they don't want to put him up there because it's not his show. It's the Tish and Adam show. The third thing is that they don't want to bring him up there because if it's a new unit, right? He probably doesn't even know what they're really doing yet, right? Exactly everything that's going on. If they ask him a question and he messes it up, it embarrasses Tish and it embarrasses Adams. And they want to be the front there. They want to be, this is their greatest idea, and they don't want anything to have any effect on that interpretation of what it's going to be. So I think those are the three things that That's why he sits in the background with Shell. You see Shell's head bobbing around a little bit, but that's about it. At least he was awake, right? Shell was awake. So,
Rob, I think you nailed it. I think this is all great perspectives and analysis of this. I think Marlon is spot on. John, you're spot on too. I'm sure if we spoke to Tanya Meisenholder, because I'm looking at him, I'm like, okay, he's not black, he's not a female, he's not short, he's not out of shape, he doesn't fit the bill. What's the sexual orientation? Because that's the only other thing we have to ask. That would be the first or something. Because according to Tanya Meisenholder, that's very important. But I think Marlon, you're absolutely right. Like, what's going on there? And with Rob, I think that's another great analysis. Is, does he even know his role yet? They appointed him as chief, but has he actually been truly informed on what's going on there? Does he know that he's putting on a dog and pony show? Does he know that this is a rebrand? What story was he sold? So I think that's a great point. We just don't know at this point, and he just doesn't fit the bill. So with that being said, I think we really solidified and validated what's going on here. I think that the CRT teams is going to be rebranded to QRT. I think the thing that is most perplexing and interesting, I find as a complete paradox, is when she says that the CRT teams address violence and the QRT teams are going to address quality of life, but not violence, but maybe some violence. So that was just a time where she got tongue-tied and she wasn't prepared. That was a great question. I think, John, that was by far the best question. I think it took balls to ask that question. That really put them on the spot, and it showed a chink in their armor.
Yeah, I don't know. My computer's real acting up today, dude. I think I don't know what the hell's going on. I think it's StreamYard. I don't know what the hell's happening here. But do you guys see me and hear me?
You had a delay. You kept like kind of like a delay for a second.
Yeah, kind of freezing up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, my computer's fine. I think it's StreamYard's acting up a little bit. I'm looking at my Wi-Fi. It's good. Another thing I think we need to talk about real quick is we've had a tragedy occur. I think it's basically been all over the news. Fortunately, I believe there were tourists, a family of 5, a father, a mother, and 3 little kids. Took a helicopter ride, New York City, I believe, out of off one of the piers, and unfortunately, there was a tragedy yesterday. So I'll play the video. You can see right there the helicopter, the thing spinning out of control, the propeller actually falling into the water. That's what that video is showing right there. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier. There goes the actual. Oh wow, yeah. It is something's happening with my StreamYard. You guys still see me now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see.
I see.
So,
that's why I didn't mean to interrupt you before, because you were talking. I wasn't sure. It was definitely a delay. Hey, jumped off.
Yeah, I think we just lost John.
Yeah, it definitely. There was he was talking earlier, and there was kind of like a delay. And I remember I jumped into talking, like he was still going in his thought because it was totally off. But I'm just happy at this point that it's not me, because whether it's my colleague, now I'm in an Airbnb. I had issues the other day. I had to jump off. Thank God John saved the day and held it down for like 7 minutes. I had to like throw my phone up. It was a disaster. But I think we really solidified some. John, how's it looking? Still a mess?
Something's up with StreamYard, bro. It's sending me a million different messages. So I think we might go down. If we go down, people, we apologize. That's not us. It's definitely StreamYard. They're sending me messages left and right. But Chief, you brought up a good point. You were talking about the press conference. There was a press conference. Kaz Daughtry ran at that press conference to talk to it. I personally think he has no business discussing any of these emergency issues. Should have been the chief of the fire department explaining what happened and answering questions. What did you want to see at that press conference? Obviously, we're all our thoughts and our prayers to the families of everybody involved, and shout out to everybody who responded to try to do what they could do. But like, what were your thoughts? We were talking a little bit offline about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, my thoughts and prayers to the family, obviously. But what I see Kaz comes up and he talks about, how he responded to the Jersey side with the fire commissioner, and how the first responders can do anything that they were supposed to do. He was like a word salad. He really wasn't really talking properly. He was using the wrong verbiage, in my opinion. And the thing was also that he doesn't have any really say in specifically that rescue or whatever. What he should be talking about is he's a deputy mayor of public safety. So I want to know what safety measures are implemented for those private helicopters. What are the inspection criterias? What do they do to make sure that everything's being run properly in those particular heliports? Because I can tell you, this is not the first one I've ever seen. I've been on the scene of ones that where helicopters, where one pilot was overweight, and as it lifted off the 34th Street heliport, it literally went right back into the water upside down. And tragically, people were killed in that as well. So, if you're the deputy mayor of public safety, that's one of my safety concerns. I don't need to hear how you responded and everything else. That's not. I don't really care about that. What are you actually doing to make sure that the public are safe? And I know it's a big tourist trap. Everybody wants to go up on those things. And John, like I said earlier today, you go by Orlando in Florida, I see these helicopters flying all around. And my advice to any our friends and listeners and followers: don't ever get on one of those, because you don't know the proper maintenance plan of those. And if they're not inspected properly or they're not done correctly, and like I said earlier, the aviation unit, unbelievable amount of maintenance that they do, and the professionalism and how they do it is unbelievable. But please don't put yourself or your family in harm's way by getting on one of those helicopters, because I would never trust them. Never.
I think that was spot on. I think that you're right. I mean, we should hear from Kaz Daughtry, his leadership, and say, hey, I have my men and women responding. Here's what they did. And as in a leadership position for safety concerns, we're going to find out what's the parameters and inspect it and see how we could prevent this going further. I think that's a clear, and I don't think that's a tall order to ask. I think that's an expectation from a leader, rather than, him putting himself in the limelight that, hey, I'm the one that responded and handled this. Okay, great. But what did your men and women do? Right? What was their role on the scene? What do they do? What courageous stuff do they do? How do they bring this to safety? What type of how do they render aid? What type of safety measures do they implement? What tools were utilized? And then talk about how do you prevent this going forward. That would also test his logic, and that would test his knowledge. But as Marlon says, right, he's constantly getting promoted by rocket fuel, and his job is always changing. He doesn't even know his job, but what he does know is how to get his embroidery. He always has his embroidery to show what his rank is and what his title is. But behind that, he doesn't actually know what he does or what he's supposed to do. He just says he gets stuff done. That's about it.
Yeah, I think Kaz could stand to watch a couple episodes of the Executive Perspective. Kaz, that's 17:05 hours on Wednesday. Okay. So I remember one episode. Chief talked about how when he got to ESU, when he got to SOD, he he stood in the back in the stack with ESU, and that's something Kaz could do here. You stand in the back and let the guys who more experienced in that, do the talking, instead of trying to get out in front of something that you really have no idea about. So again, Wednesdays at 17:05 with the chief there and Ron.
No, I mean, I think that, I think it's fair to bring up, because that's what I was saying earlier, like before we got on the show. I'm like, if I'm the deputy mayor of public safety, am I running to that press conference to be in the front? No. I'm like, what do I know about it? Like, why am I gathering all this information? Pat Donahue says it too. Like, he doesn't remember banks running from job to job, lights and sirens, and rushing in front of the camera. And because traditionally you shouldn't, right? Like, who's in charge? Like, as per the SIMS, right? Or we there's NIMS, the National Incident Response Management System, which we're guided by. But in New York City, we have such a large organization that we're guided by SIMS, right? Citywide Incident Management and Response. And in this scenario, like, is Kaz Daughtry? I don't remember reading Deputy Mayor of Public Safety.
Yeah.
It's NYPD's in charge of this incident. FDNY is in charge of this incident. Somebody else brought up they want to hear from the FAA. 100%, dude. I agree with you. You don't really care about their response. They're doing what they should do, exactly like the chief said. I'm totally with you, but obviously it's the initial, right? This is what happened. People want to hear from city officials what's going on. I think Tucker said it best. Like, if you listen to the interview, all of this is under investigation. I don't want to give out wrong information. Obviously, the FAA is looking into it. And that's kind of what the response should have been, a real brief, quick press conference instead of hearing how Kaz Daughtry drove to Jersey and how the first responders did what they were supposed to do. But this is what he's got. He's a one-trick pony. I'm shocked he didn't bring up the drones, dude, honestly. Like, I'm shocked.
I think, John, and Rob, I think, John, you're freezing up a little bit again. I think what's interesting about this is, and Rob, I'm sure you agree, being in a position of leadership, sometimes it's knowing what to say, but it's also knowing what not to say. Sometimes it's knowing when to be there and when not to be there. And that's ability of a leader of sometimes getting out of the way, letting your guys do their job. Like Kaz Daughtry, you don't need to be everywhere to be in a position of leadership. Your presence, your directives are your leadership. You don't actually have to be physically present. And it just shows you it's more concerned about stage photo ops and actually, I guess, name recognition that he wants so bad. He's vying so bad for this recognition that it's not organic. It's just completely artificial. And I think that really is the art of leadership, is knowing just not what to say, what not to say, and when to be there, and sometimes getting out of the way. And that is a good leader, is knowing, okay, who is best, who's has the most knowledge in this particular area, and who's relevant to this specific scene. And as John was saying, like, no one cares that you went to Jersey. Is that a big deal? I mean, what, they use the NYPD Easy Pass? Let's get the brass taxes and what's actually important.
Listen, in the past, what happens is when the deputy mayor goes there, that pulls in the fire commissioner and the police commissioner. Okay. In the past, that would have been an interview that I did, and I would have done with the battalion chief or a deputy chief from the fire department, and then we would have turned it over to the CO of Harbor, and and he could explain the scuba operation, and then I would have turned it over to the CO of aviation, who could have explained some of the problems that he saw when the helicopter went down, whether it lost its rotor blade or whatever. But because he went there, because he wanted the limelight, he pulls in people that really were unnecessary in that conversation, and he really, he didn't have an intelligent conversation, in my opinion. I think actually Tish did a pretty good job, and she, in my opinion, Tish embarrassed him because he gave better information than he could even provide. So I mean, it grew legs too fast, and it was not necessary.
Yeah, he has a real problem with self-promotion and not delegating tasks, You think about all these videos he's put up where he's on Roosevelt Avenue or in Soho or in the 7-5, wherever else, Those are tasks that you could have easily delegated to the local commanders or local or supervisors in a local precinct, instead of, you doing it and showing up with a camera to film it, So it's all about self-promotion with him.
I mean, look at this. This is the tweet. This is his tweet. We witnessed firsthand the extraordinary efforts, bravery, and collaboration of FDNY, NYPD News, OEM, blah, 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 and federal and New Jersey partners during the rescue and recovery efforts. We are on scene with New York City Mayor Tucker, Fire Commissioner Tucker, and Commissioner Zackle, whatever his name is, the guy that's in charge of OEM, at the site of the helicopter crash. And, wherever he is, whatever he's doing, he has a new, fresh embroidered jacket now with his 5-star deputy mayor shield, which of public safety, which I believe he made up. But other than that, look how staged this photo is, dude. Look at it. He's pointing like he's directing something. Like, what are you directing at that scene, dude? Who are you to direct anybody in the fire department? Who are you to say anything in OEM? Like, what training do you have? What leadership experience do you have? And this is the photo that needs to get out. Somebody died. A family died. 3 little kids, a mother and a father who came here to New York to be tourists, and they lost their lives because safety protocols weren't put in place. And you use it as a tool to promote yourself, to show a picture of you pointing. And look, it's not like this isn't a real photo. He's looking directly at the camera. Did he have 2 takes? Did he have 3 takes? I mean, even if you were there, like, why are you showing up with the photographers? 1, and 2, if the photographer takes this picture, are you really posting it? I'm not. I'm gonna be like, we're not using that photo. But do it of the men and women, the everyday cop and firemen and members of OEM. Do it of the team. Show those people out there. If we're gonna give a bird's eye view for the public to show that we're there and we have everything under control, do that. But no, that's not what he does. He shows up with his fake NYPD hat, with his fake NYPD patch that you paid for, in the jacket that you paid for, in the phone that you paid for, and showing like he's a conquering general when he's conquered nothing. This is a tragedy, and he's using it for self-promotion, and I'm sick of watching this. It's at funerals. It's at deaths. This kid is really, there's really something wrong with him. I'm sorry. There's something wrong with him. This photo should never go out, in my opinion.
No, don't be sorry. I think you're 100% right. I think Marlon's right. It's about self-promotion. And I said, he wants to boost himself up. And obviously, he has a huge ego, and he enjoys it. I mean, we had a reenactment of Iwo Jima. We have Marines that raise the flag in Iwo Jima, and they try to reenact that at a campus and try to compare a parallel to, stopping kids trespassing at a school, to Marines invading Japan and actually raising a flag as young Marines were getting killed over there. I can't believe that we're having the same parallel. But that's what we see time and time again, right? Is this just a stage photo op? I mean, no doubt about it. You look at that picture, it's not organic. It's completely artificial. He's not directing the fire department. He didn't put pictures of the family and say, I'm sorry, rest in peace. John, this is not the first time we saw this. Even when Jonathan Dillard lost his life, he tried to capitalize on the loss of life to actually make excuses for the unprofessionalism that he was using on social media, along with John Schell, that they, because of the stress and the duress that they were under of losing a police officer, to excuse their unprofessionalism. It's time and time again that we see self-promotion. That's right way to put it, Marlon. And we see self-promotion to protect, and not only to protect, but to elevate their egos. And I think it says a lot about a person, their character. As in a position of leadership, you should be commending others before you commend yourself. And that's not what we see here. And that, to me, that just, in plain English, it's just bad leadership. It's bad leadership all around. And no one has had the balls to tell Kaz Daughtry, you're really failing out there. This is not a good look. Instead, they're just elevating him even more. So in defense of Kaz Daughtry, it's almost as if, how can we say he is doing the wrong thing when no one's telling him? The only one that's telling him is what he believes is his opposition and polarizing. Because according to Kaz Daughtry, we've heard it, the only ones that have anything to say or have any critique or criticism is those in retirement. And as John had said, I thought John was spot on in his terminology. It's yes, the retired guys ourselves actually speaking out about some of the atrocities, but it comes from the rank and file. We're the voice to speak for the voiceless. I just think it shows bad leadership. And that's what it is. And Eric Adams and his constituents are not telling Kaz Daughtry this is not a good look. They're actually doubling down and saying, hey, Kaz Daughtry, you're doing a great job. And they're really boosting his ego even further and making it more of an egotistical and tyrannical administration that we have. And I don't see it changing. It hasn't gotten better. If anything, it's getting worse. It's just more silent, and we have to pay attention. We have to pay attention because it's not getting any better.
He's trying to justify his position. That's all he's trying to do. He knows he doesn't deserve that position, and he's trying to justify it. And I can tell you right where he is. He's not doing any leading there. He's not giving any direction. First of all, he doesn't know the job of what the rescue firemen are doing, what the aviation and harbor and scuba are doing. All right. I'll tell you something. When I've been on those jobs, I don't lead at that time either. All I do is guide, because those guys know exactly what they're doing. There's no reason to have to tell anybody anything. They're in rescue mode. I've witnessed it by both agencies working collaborative together, and they get the job done, and they do it 100% beautifully. It's the best thing you'll ever see. But for him to stage that photo, I'm guaranteeing he's pointing at some hot dog place that he's going to go after this job's over. Hey, driver, park over there. We're going to get right over there. That's it. That is a staged, and as a leader, you should never stage a photo because everybody knows that it's foolish. It's just not wrong.
You know who we need to blame for this? That rookie driver of Cass. Whoever's driving Cass, bro, you got to do better than this, okay?
That little handsome white kid. Yeah.
If your boss is gonna pose like that, you got to bring him a flag and a bullhorn, okay? So we can do a Captain Morgan pose with both, and we could get a fantastic looking picture, okay? So, bro, whoever's out there, if you want to be a deputy commissioner one day, okay, if you want to rise through the ranks of being a first grade detective, then deputy commissioner too, you're gonna have to bring that flag and bullhorn so Cass could get a great photo.
I hate to pick on the kid, but it literally it's like annoying to watch. Like I would bring in the press conference for whatever reason, StreamYard, when I try to interact with the outside like the X's or the Instagrams. It's just not working. It's freezing, it's throwing me out. I don't know what's happening with StreamYard, so I can't bring in the press conference. But go to at Kaz Daughtry. Go to his official now, thanks to the Finest Unfiltered, his now official X handle where he can't block you from. And you'll see he posted a 30-second clip of himself talking at the press conference. And he sounds like an idiot. And I'm like, do you know how many media appearances that we do that I hate? I never post them and then people are like, oh, you did a good job. And I'm like, really? I thought I did horrible. Like, you know what I mean? And everything he does, he loves. He puts it out there. And then, funny that even when he was blocking us, he had this whole self-promotion sticker at the end. It was at Kaz Daughtry, follow at Kaz Daughtry on Instagram, follow at Kaz Daughtry on X. Oh, and by the way, Kaz, you better unblock us on Instagram too. I just remembered. I meant to tell you that. But look at the video he did about the towing the cars. There's a New York City flag, and he took the flag of New York City and he put himself on it. Deputy Mayor of Kaz Daughtry. So now the flag. I like the flag. I think I'm gonna put that up in the background in the next show because I think we need a Kaz Daughtry New York City flag going forward, and we should make that the official flag of New York City since he's everywhere.
I just want to raise a question, and I think we know the answer, but let's be honest with it. And John, I don't think it's picking on him. I don't think it's picking on him at all. I think it's being honest because he needs critique. Someone has to tell him, and that's what I'm trying to say. They're not telling him you look like an idiot. We're the only ones telling him. If anything, I think we're better friends to him than they are at the upper echelon and this administration because we're telling him the truth. But do we think he knows what his job is or what it's supposed to be? Honestly, just taking everything back, do we really believe that he knows what his job is?
I told you, he's the traffic kid that they put in anti-crime for the day. And now they took the kid traffic, the 2-year rookies out there. He's writing your wife. He's writing your cousin. He's writing, I'm going to get 100 summonses in one day. And they tell him, you're in charge of the city. And he's like, ooh. And he runs out and he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. No, he doesn't know what he's doing. He absolutely doesn't. But yeah, you're right, dude. I did a presentation once and I ate right before it. And I ate a poppy seed bagel. It had poppy seeds in my teeth. So right before I went in, I talked to somebody, and then I do the presentation, and I go out, and during the presentation, I'm like, oh, shit, I think I have poppy seeds in my teeth, right? So I'm trying not to show my teeth. I go out, I go right to the bathroom after I give the presentation, and I'm like, holy shit, my teeth look like they're rotted, right? Because I have poppy seeds everywhere. So I immediately go into the kid, and I'm like, dude, you didn't tell me that I have poppy seeds? He's like, I thought you just had a problem with your teeth. I'm like, bro, I should punch you in your face. You let me go out there like that? What the hell's wrong with you? And that's what everyone's doing with Kaz. And we're not doing that. We're the guy that's like, yo, go brush your teeth before you go on the press conference. Go brush your teeth. It's not the retired guys, dude. It's the cops that are on duty. It's the media. It's the public. Even the criminals are clowning you. Everybody's clowning you. We're the only ones giving you honest critiques. So I think, whatever, like I said, you should just come on the podcast, get it over with, squash the beef,
Yeah. Think how much better of a speaker he's become. And that's because of the criticism from us.
He still sucks, but he's 1,000 times better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I say. Honestly, I think we're better friends. It's almost like, someone has a booger hanging their nose all day and no one tells them. Like, at what point do you tell them? You gotta tell them. And everyone's afraid to check each other. Like, no one's telling them. Obviously, they're not telling them that you look like a fool, because if they did, he would stop. That's why I say, you know what, Cass, we're better friends to you, because at least we're honest with you. I mean, I bet behind closed doors, maybe some of these people are like, hey, even though they elevated you, because I don't know if you have secret squirrel information on these people, but they're probably saying behind your back that you look stupid, you look like an idiot. Meanwhile, we're just saying it out loud. So who do you really trust? At least you know what we say is actually legit, and saying it to your face and being honest. And you're right, Marlon, he did get better. We see a contrast difference. And I do think it's because of this podcast, this platform, actually being critical, because we know that he watches it day in and day out. I think he watches the podcast, watches it over, analyzes it. I mean, he even started a whole drone program, and retired Detective Mike Smith actually solidified, validated that, the stuff that me and John spoke about when it came to his controller in his office, his Xbox, really attributed to his drone program. So, you know what, Kaz Daughtry, come on this podcast. We'll do some self-promotion for you. Marlon will make some videos and put it out there, and it will be all about Kaz Daughtry. So,
either he's got people around him that aren't telling him the truth, and everybody's telling him it's great, or there's people that telling him, hey, you really sucked at that interview, but he says, well, I'm too good to take any advice from you. I'm better than that, I always go back to, I would tell a joke at work, and the guys would all laugh. Ha ha ha! It's great joke, great joke. I'd come home, I tell my wife the joke, and she go, that joke sucks. What's wrong with you? I said, why did everybody laugh? She goes, because you're a chief, asshole. That's why they laughed, not because the joke was funny. I said, oh, all right, I gotcha. I gotta get people that understand my joke, how bad my joke is, and tell me it's bad. Then that's what he needs.
Don't worry, we'll let you know.
Yeah. Well, so, all right, listen, we're going. We went over 2 hours. I would bring more stuff in, but this thing's not working. I'm trying to bring more videos in. It's not happening, dude. It's like, for whatever reason, the StreamYard's blocking all the stuff. So, anything you guys want to talk about before we get out of here? I can't bring any of the other stuff in, because I wanted to show the misinformation that was coming out that Juju was talking about. I wanted to show just more of this administration's misinformation, like clear as day. But for whatever reason today, StreamYard's acting up. It's not letting me interact with the other site.
Johnny, are you able to pull it up just to try it? If some reason we're getting no,
I can't pull anything up.
I mean, listen, we're 2 hours and 17 minutes into it. I want to thank everybody, friends and listeners. Great engagement. Some of the comments are just awesome. Obviously, we can't get to everyone. If we don't get to a comment that's really good, we apologize. We try to. Snake Plissken, $4.99. Coffee and donuts. Shout out to the podcast. Well, shout out to you. We appreciate it. Lampwick says, John, love the beard. Yeah, he's been wearing it for a while. Listen, sometimes we get some glitches, but we apologize. We do our best, but I think we're putting on a lot of information for you. Thank you, everyone. Any closing words, Marlon, Chief, John, and we'll close out the day. Of course, it's Friday Roundtable. We'll see you Monday. We'll be 8:05 live Eastern Time, and of course, 5:05 Pacific Coast. Some people saying prayers for Erica's family. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the support, and we'll have Sal Greco back next week. And of course, the executive perspective. And Marlon is spot on. Kaz Daughtry, it's Wednesday night. If you're not watching because you're more focused on this podcast, you should probably get more involved with the executive perspective. It will be beneficial to you.
Yeah, he could use the executive development. Okay. So have a good weekend, everyone in the chat. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, John, Eric, Marlon, great being on the roundtable. We guys love the topics, love the conversation. Open invite to Kaz if he want. I will put him on the podcast if he wants. We'll give him a hands-on interview. More than welcome. And like Marlon says, 17:05 on Wednesdays. Shout out to my partner Ron Layson. He does an excellent job. Was in the chat today. Always a great perspective. Love working with him. I think we're having a lot of fun on that channel. And again, thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry about the glitches today, fellas and ladies. So we'll get that fixed by Monday. I don't know. Like I said, we just couldn't interact with all the other sites. It was giving us a hard time. So that's it. We'll be back Monday live 8:05. Wednesday we got Paperboy Prince coming at you live 8:05, running for New York City mayor, top mayoral campaign of the ad. The following Wednesday we're gonna have Zohran Mamandami on. And we're going to continue to bring on, we got a bunch of city council candidates that we got to get on and a lot of other candidates that we need to get on. So we're going to be sprinkling in a lot more interviews. Plus, we're always going to focus around bringing on the interviews that we like doing the best, which is the retired members of service. That's on New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered podcast. Obviously, the executive perspective, check them out Wednesdays, 17:05 or 5:05 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays. They'll be back at you on Wednesday. And Sal Greco, Tuesdays and Thursdays, the Sal Greco show at 12:05 or possibly 13:05. So we're going to see. We're working out those schedules now, depending. So, yeah, that's it, people. Appreciate everybody for joining today. Cass, sorry for the roasting, but I think it was well-deserved. So, I mean, and that's it. When it comes in regards to the quality of life teams, it's just more of the same, more of the Eric Adams administration and gaslighting. So that's it, people. Find us Unfiltered. We'll be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888-901-BLUE.